So an increasing issue that I've seen within a lot of modern games nowadays is that gaming is no longer offensive. And that's with most products, however. Most movies and television shows are not offensive. When you look in the past at past games, however, you will notice, and let's just say most media, you will notice that characters were not afraid to call each other slurs, they were not afraid to offend each other, they were not afraid to be jerks. And it's not even just being jerks, but simply they were not afraid to not coddle each other's emotions. Nowadays, in storytelling, it has become so increasingly and incredibly bland, offensively bad, offensively boring, offensively personality-less. There is no character anymore in gaming. There's no character anymore in modern media. And why is that? Because they're not willing to make characters offensive, and they're not willing to make stories offensive. They're not willing to, and this is a problem with the modern developers, modern storytellers. They do not understand that there's an entire art behind storytelling and behind creating interesting dialogue, of going in and out of being offensive and inoffensive. You need to make a character that does not care about other characters' emotions, care about their feelings, and care about their sensitivities. When you make characters based within that, you make boring characters. Because in the real world, in real life, what the human psychology is allured by are people who have convictions, and convictions that are worth standing by. Not convictions that stand by all other convictions, because not everything is equal. Not everybody wants to move to the same country equally, and not everybody wants to be a part of every friend group equally. You look all throughout the world, and nobody wants to eat the same food equally. Nobody wants to have everything equally, and nobody wants to experience the world equally. There are things, experiences, products and values within the world that people want more than other qualities, products, and values, because there is such a thing as called discernment, quality evaluation, value evaluation, and that's tied to everything in life. There are ugly people and there are beautiful people, and we understand that there are these differences, and people tend to trend towards these differences, different from the other variables offered to them. People prefer superior values to inferior values. And when we look at a game that has air quotes offensive characters, because let's be honest, nothing is truly offensive. It's just people who are weak and weak-minded. They're the ones who are offended by everything and find everything to be a threat to their sensitivities and their sensitive lives. A great character is not afraid of offending other characters because they know what they stand for. A strong man, especially within a story, is not afraid to tell a weak man that he is weak, pathetic, and weaselly. He is not afraid to stand for his convictions, unlike a weak man, a weak character who will cower away and hobble away into their hole. We know what the differences are and what they look like between characters. We love, in gaming, in stories, movies, television shows, we love offensive characters, not degenerates. There's that difference. We love, however, offensive characters that have noble and worthy convictions that they stand for, values, ideals, and beliefs that are worth standing for. And this is a separate conversation. Those, however, happen to be traditional values. Strength is a traditional belief, is a traditional ideal. To possess and achieve strength, intellect, stability, and a non-modern sense of security, because security has also been a hijacked word within modernity. However, when we look at a historical lens on security, those are the things that we've always wanted and loved within storytelling and characters for as old as time. An offensive character is often a superior character because they're willing to stand upon convictions that other characters are not willing to. And in fact, What is labeled as offensive is typically someone that simply is committed to their goals, and they know what values there are within life and what is worthy of fighting for, what is worthy of maintaining and preserving over the things that destroy, over the things that take away value. Never forget this. A rodent will find it offensive when an exterminator wishes to remove the pest, to remove an infestation. However, for the exterminator understands that they must get rid of a pest in order to limit the spreading of a disease. Strong characters will innately offend or be offensive in character to those who are less than them. And those who are less than them happen to have less noble, or as you can call it, ignoble characteristics, qualities, and traits. A strong character stands in the way of weakness. Standing in the way of weakness will always offend the weak. In storytelling, it is important to understand. And when making a game, a movie, or a television show that has compelling and worthwhile characters, you must understand that are not degenerates, by the way. There's a difference between a petty, offensive character and a thoughtful, offensive character. And we've known these characters for the longest time. And let's just be honest again, once more, this modern idea of offensive doesn't even exist. But that's exactly what it's become. To be someone that knows their own value, to be a character, or to pursue an ideal within a story that is worth fighting for. It is difficult, and you will trip alongst the way. It is not easy to be a strong man. You will drop the dumbbell. You will drop a heavy weight, a heavy boulder. You will crush beneath a cumbersome load. But the point is the pursuit of an ideal. In that pursuit of an ideal, it is the daring venture to overcome great odds. And for a weak man, a strong man will always look like a hypocrite and always be the one who brings the most offense to him, because a weak man cannot lift a heavy boulder. A weak man will never even risk to crush themselves beneath a heavy boulder for the sake of overcoming a great odd. A weak man is offended by what he cannot do and is aghast at what a strong man dares to do and will fail before a potential success or even a partial success that none other can even achieve or dream of achieving. Offensive characters. This term has been hijacked within the modern landscape. However, when you truly look at what an offensive character truly is, it is a normal individual. Not this so-called term of new normal. Normal. They're healthy. They're seeking out noble aims and noble means. You have a man who is attempting to defeat the villain. You have a man that's attempting to fix the village of its problems. You have a story about a man who is overcoming his own strife, let's say generational strife, correcting the sins of your father or correcting your own. You can look at a great story like Star Wars is a great example of that. And there's things that you could even criticize with Star Wars in its storytelling, but that's a separate and another conversation. Overwhelmingly, however, that is what so many have loved about Star Wars, is that it was about normal people. And normal people, by the way, can also be extraordinary people. Because normality is about norms. Straight men and straight women having children and raising those children, desiring power and achieving power, desiring wealth and achieving wealth, desiring stability of mind, of life, of society, and achieving those sorts of stabilities, desiring knowledge and achieving knowledge in some sort of noble venture or gain, which does not need to mean, none of these things mean, by the way, pro-social behavior, because there's a mixture of pro-social and anti-social that matters within these characterizations. You must have both, not equally in everything, but there's a balance amongst these different values and different pursuits that we will see in stories and characters. There will be a mixture of antisocial and pro-social. For instance, there's a level of antisocial behavior in Batman, and that's a part of what makes Batman such a great character. But of course, towards a thug or criminally minded individual, Batman is an offensive character, right? Batman is a fascist. He's some kind of tyrant, an authoritarian. That's what you get out of the woke left today, and that's why they love to call some of these characters offensive. The truth is that what we understand today, and specifically what a specific ideological current like to call certain characters today as problematic or offensive. These are characters that fight for what is worthy. They fight for what is beautiful and what is noble. They fight for what all throughout history has been the most desired value, but also the toughest value to maintain and achieve. Beauty can be something that is difficult to both attain and achieve, especially for a man. If you wish to achieve a beautiful body, it does take work, and you will trip and fall along the way, even if you remain committed to your goal, because it is not all things that are worth having. It doesn't just make them difficult to have, but there are many things that are worth having. They are difficult to achieve or attain or maintain. What used to be normal has simply now become, air quotes, offensive. But in truth and reality, what is offensive is exactly what we need. And someone making an insensitive joke or comment to the other character is also a part of humanity. Not BSing someone, saying directly to them what you think about them, being blunt about your thoughts and ideas. That is a part of creating a character that's worth listening to, within a story, within specifically a game. And it's for this reason that when you experience modern games, the characters are very lazily written, they're boring, they're flat, and there's nothing interesting about them. And in fact, they don't even exist. These are not characters, these are not people. These are inoffensive characterizations and manifestations of political ideology, of coddled political ideology. And it's that much of what that ideology is. No one wants to buy it. No one wants to engage with it. And fundamentally, we laugh and we fall in love with the things that are capable of offending us. Because it's in some essence that the things that are capable of degrading or highlighting a degradation of our own value are things that in of themselves have value, or in disparity, a higher value. To make a living and breathing world within storytelling or within a game, if we're going to look outside of movies and television shows, even within the simulation experience or a simulative narrative experience like you have with games, a character that is offensive adds to the life of a world, adds to the complexity of characters, their stakes, their convictions, and also the presence of a conflict, of arguments. A character that is willing to offend is a character that is willing to fight for what the conflict of the story is even about. And that's what matters most. When you look at these stories, we care about what characters are willing to fight for. Every story is about a conflict. And if they're afraid to be offensive, to offend themselves or to offend others, then they don't have what it takes to fight for whatever their convictions are. And because of that reason, you are now officially engaging with a narrative that is either propaganda or a convoluted fantasy. If you wish to have an experience that can make you laugh, if you wish to have an experience that knows how to draw out the enamor of the mind, if you wish to have an experience that has inherent value, and if you wish to have characters that are not boring, then games need to be offensive again.